That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, you know exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go through and rank these running backs for this week. Now, there are a lot of intriguing matchups that I think we need to be discussing. So, of course, we're going to go through. We're going to give you 24, 25, maybe even 26 running backs, depending on how much time that we have to get through these rankings and tiers. That way, it's very easy for you to follow along. But of course, before we get into just that, we are going to have to go through and pull up our last YouTube video so we can give away some Fantasy Flock Network hats. So make sure you go subscribe to this channel, drop a like on the live stream, and leave a comment, whatever that comment may be. Every single time you drop a like on the video and leave a comment in the comment section, you get entered in to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. So let me pull up our last video so I can pick a couple comments. And our first one's going to come from Christopher, who says, first year play and lost my first week because I had no idea what I was doing. You've helped me really turn things around. Would love to rep you with a hat. Okay, my friend, well, you just got a Fantasy Flock Network hat. Thank you so much for all the support, of course. And then Pushead Fan, happy to say that you win the next hat. This is someone that comes out to a lot of our live streams. Says, your knowledge and insight has helped my fantasy game so much over the past few seasons. Would really appreciate you. I know it's great to see your channel growing up. Thank you, my friend, so much for supporting the show, of course. All you have to do is go to the description of this video if you win that Fantasy Flock Network hat. So we're talking to those two people, and send me an email with the video you won that hat in with your physical address so I can get that to you out ASAP. And yeah, that should be it. Let's go through and let's talk about some of these players. Let's go to our first running back here. And my God, starting it off at number 1, Derrick Henry. And with Derrick Henry here, going up against the New York Jets, if you had to put an over-under on how many rushing yards Derrick Henry is going to have in this matchup, I would assume that that over-under, like if we were creating a player prop, it would have to be at like 724,000 rushing yards against the New York Jets, because this is a Jets offense that can't move the ball down the field effectively. We know that. I mean, it's almost guaranteed that the New York Jets are going to go. They're going to get a large lead in this game. They're going to be able to just drain that clock with Derrick Henry. We saw Derrick Henry have 35 rushing attempts against the Seattle Seahawks. Let me actually look up the spread for this game real quick, just so we can kind of entertain ourselves. I actually have to go through and actually make a sports betting video for our sports betting channel right after this one. So of course it would be pretty advantageous to have these spreads pulled up anyway. And so you're going to be looking at the New York Jets. They were 10.5-point dogs against the Denver Broncos this past week. Now they are 8-point dogs against the Tennessee Titans. Oh my gosh, that seems like, honestly, a line that I would be taking the over. I'd imagine that you would rather have Tennessee -8 here. I mean, Derrick Henry is just going to be playing a game where it's a blowout, and we know Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. He's going to be at 1. And now in that same tier, because I think we can still be very excited about this matchup, we are going to be going with Alvin Kamara. Now, Alvin Kamara, you actually saw him this past week go out there and get a considerable amount of usage in his receiving game. And this is what you were kind of looking for, understanding that with Alvin Kamara, I mean, this is a running back that's playing on an offense that really has no receiving options currently for Jameis Winston. He is going to be near the very top of the league in running back targets. That happened this past week. We know historically has been a running back that's very efficient. Now, yes, you saw this offense completely collapse in week 2 against the Carolina Panthers. I think the Panthers at this time, I was completely wrong. I thought that Panthers defense was something we didn't have to be worried about coming into the year. But I mean, the Panthers, I think that you can just safely say at this point, they have a very strong defense. Now going up against the New York Giants for Alvin Kamara, I'm not concerned at all. Like we just said, this is a running back that gets a lot of usage as a receiver. Cordell Patterson just had 1 million targets out of this backfield for the Atlanta Falcons this past week against the New York Giants. So yeah, we're going to have Alvin Kamara in that same tier. But now that's going to be the only 2 running backs in that top tier. Let's drop it down to our next one, where we're going to have Dalvin Cook leading us off here at 3. Now, Dalvin Cook is going to have a tough matchup going up against the Cleveland Browns. We said this was a tough matchup for David Montgomery, Allen Robinson, and Justin Fields this past week. Justin Fields just got completely shut down. And of course, the Minnesota Vikings have a significantly better offense than the Chicago Bears, and Dalvin Cook's a significantly better running back than David Montgomery. So we don't need to be that worried about the matchup. Now, it's going to be enough for us to have Dalvin Cook 1 spot lower. And of course, I mean, you're going to have to monitor Dalvin Cook's health going into the week, because if this is another scenario where Dalvin Cook just isn't at practice, then he gets one limited practice in before he's a game time decision, then you have to be lowering your overall expectations on Dalvin Cook. Now, I'm recording this on September 28th. So at this point, we don't necessarily know the true extent of Dalvin Cook's health coming into this week. I'm going to be making this ranking operating under the assumption that he is good to go. But of course, this is something you need to continue to monitor all the way up until kickoff. Now, our next running back in also a pretty tough matchup is going to be Aaron Jones going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So yeah, the Steelers, this overall team just looks atrocious. Like if we actually pull up the line for this game, the Packers are going to be 7-point favorites here against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is understandable as Ben Roethlisberger looks like he can't get anything going. But I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers still have a pretty strong defense. So that is going to make me just want to rank Aaron Jones in tier 2. But of course, still a fantastic player. And our last running back in this tier, in tier 5, is going to be mainly for PPR formats, Austin Eckler. Eckler just coming out, crushing every single week with the amount of targets that he is getting out of the backfield. I mean, if we're pulling up Austin Eckler's fantasy production right now to see what he's done, of course, this past matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs had it where Austin Eckler, I mean, wasn't in a situation where you would naturally assume he's going to go crush that Kansas City Chiefs defense, just given what they can do, but he still drops 22 fantasy points. And because he has all the usage in the receiving game over the past 2 weeks, Austin Eckler has had a combined 15 receptions. That is absolutely fantastic. He's literally caught every single one of his targets out of the backfield. He also comes away with a receiving touchdown this past week. So yeah, you can be very excited with what we have from Austin Eckler. I think this is a player that we can continue to rank in that elite tier. So he's going to be right here against the Las Vegas Raiders. Not too worried about the matchup. Now let's drop it down one more tier here. Going into tier 3, we will have a decent amount of running backs in this tier, and starting it off with Najee Harris going up against the Green Bay Packers. Now with Harris, this is a very fragile ranking. I actually think we'll be able to jump him up to the tier above if there's no Deontay Johnson, no Juju Smith-Schuster in this game, considering the fact that Najee Harris was out here getting close to setting NFL records with the amount of targets that he was having out of the backfield this season. I mean, if I came out and told you, hey, I mean, one running back this year is going to have a game where he sees 19 targets out of the backfield, who are you going to guess that's going to be? I mean, I would imagine if you sit there at the beginning of the season and go, is it DeAndre Swift? Is it Christian McCaffrey? Is it Austin Eckler? I mean, you would probably list off 20 running backs before you would get to Najee Harris. But this is a running back that had a great college target share at Alabama, which we discussed in our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide as something that does translate to that receiving game usage in the NFL. And of course, no Deontay Johnson, no Juju Smith-Schuster, just makes it where Big Ben, with his very limited arm strength, is having to check the ball down consistently to Najee Harris. So we're going to have him here at 6, despite the offensive struggles, mainly just based off of the volume that he should see. Now, our next ranking is going to be a pretty difficult one for me. Now, I'll say we can go a couple different routes with this. We're going to, for now, have Ezekiel Elliott here at 7. I'm not very confident with this ranking, however, just knowing that he is going up against the Carolina Panthers defense. And I'm very afraid that this is more so just vividness bias, that this is me buying into a small sample that we had this Dallas Cowboys offense going out there and crushing the Philadelphia Eagles this past week. But at the end of the day, what we said in that live stream after Monday night is we don't want to be drastically changing our value from where we had it previously of Ezekiel Elliott, because while yes, the offense looked great, while yes, Ezekiel Elliott got that usage at the goal line, we were already operating under those two assumptions. And at the same time, Tony Pollard did split this backfield with Ezekiel Elliott. So it's a spot where I think you can go a multitude of different ways. If we're having to break some ties here, let's just go with the better offense. So let's go with Ezekiel Elliott at 7. Now, our running back 8 will be Saquon Barkley, someone we actually ranked, I believe it's the running back 7 this past week and had on our must buy low video. And here with Saquon Barkley, a tough matchup against the New Orleans Saints. He's almost in a similar situation as Najee Harris, where if you're seeing a significant amount of injuries to the wide receiver position here, you should just naturally assume that Saquon Barkley is going to be getting a considerable amount of targets out of this backfield. He actually drew 7 targets out of this backfield this past week. And I know Saquon Barkley had a great week. I wish I could come out here and act all excited because we said he's a buy low. And I mean, it was clear as day why he was a buy low against the Atlanta Falcons. I'm a little concerned that it took a couple injuries to the wide receiver position to get Saquon Barkley to the 7 targets he saw this past week. I mean, this was a running back that I liked coming into the year when you were getting him at the end of the first round, the beginning of the second. I was saying there's no way in hell he should ever fall out of the first, and you should be taking him at the end of the first every single time. But, I mean, the problem is, the reason why we were saying that is we had established a baseline from Saquon Barkley in 2018 and 2019 that this is a running back that's drawing 7 targets out of his backfield weekly. Now, I really want to see if we can do that again against the New Orleans Saints. It looks like they're taking the training wheels off Saquon Barkley, but I'm a little concerned it was just due to the overall situation you had in New York this past week. Now, our next running back, someone that y'all know I'm not a massive fan of, Nick Chubb. We're going to have Nick Chubb here at 9 going up against the Minnesota Vikings. It's not the best matchup, not the worst matchup. I mean, here you did see Joe Mixon going back to week 1 where he was able to find success against this team, and also with the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, I know that this past week it just got out of hand as you had Alexander Mattison coming out here and crushing, and the Vikings having a very large lead in this game. I mean, I think based on that, we can view it as a team that is most likely going to be at least competitive with the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, the Browns look like they're one of the best teams in football right now. I mean, here, this should be a spot where with Nick Chubb, he's still just the lead running back in a committee behind the best offensive line in football. So while, yes, I said we didn't want to be drafting him at the end of the first round coming into the year, I would have preferred to have Saquon Barkley in a PPR format, given the fact that Kareem Hunt's going to be seeing a significant amount of usage in this backfield. Nick Chubb, still an elite talent. Nick Chubb still running behind an elite offensive line. So we'll have him here at 9. Now at 10, we're going to include him, Joe Mixon. Now with Joe Mixon, yes, he was disappointing this past week in a game where you would honestly kind of expect that Joe Mixon would possibly be exciting if I would have told you that the Cincinnati Bengals were leading this game the entire time and they actually had more rushing attempts than they had passing attempts. Now, with that being said, I mean, he comes out and instead only gets 1 target out of the backfield, only puts up 10 fantasy points. Going back to what we had against Minnesota, though, this was a running back that you saw have that traditional 3-down role. And at the same time with Joe Mixon here, just a great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The matchup's what's going to make Joe Mixon a running back that we're going to have in tier 3 rather than tier 4, because I think there are some running backs in tier 4 that he's at least close to. I mean, at least one in particular that we'll get to right now. So Thomas, let's drop this one down lower. Let's go to tier 4. Let's go to DeAndre Swift with a running back 11. Now with DeAndre Swift, he's a running back that I definitely have higher than this in my rest of season rankings. You're looking at DeAndre Swift saying this is a running back that is a bona fide stud for a PPR format. Literally exactly what you wanted with DeAndre Swift coming into this season we're getting. He is having that Aaron Jones type workload where he's just getting so many targets out of the backfield. He's getting the usage in the red zone. We've already seen him come away with a rushing touchdown this past week against the Baltimore Ravens. Now it's a tough matchup going up against the Chicago Bears, but just like I said last week, DeAndre Swift is more so matchup proof than a lot of these other running backs that you'll have, given the fact that he is driving the majority of his production through the air, and that's going to happen regardless of whoever he's going with against the defense. So yes, I mean, he comes out as 7 receptions, 60 receiving yards this past week. He has 47 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown to go along with it. Chicago, I mean, not necessarily one of the best spots you're going to be finding. I think that this game's going to be very low scoring, to be honest, between the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. Let me look up the line for this game. So you actually have the Bears as 3-point favorites over the Detroit Lions. That is really intriguing. Now our next player here in the same tier, someone that I think we need to be looking to sell. Loved him coming into the season, but it looks like it's not working out. Jonathan Taylor. Now, Jonathan Taylor, we are going to have him at running back 12. Really, the only reason we're having him at running back 12 here is strictly based on the idea that he's going up against the Miami Dolphins. I mean, if he had any other matchup, I think we have to have Jonathan Taylor lower than this, but against Miami, this should be a defense that really has not been able to stop anyone so far this season. Now, I want to be very scared of Jonathan Taylor, to be honest, as this is a running back that just lost Quentin Nelson to a high ankle sprain. I think that loss of Quentin Nelson is really going to impact this offense in a negative way, but the matchup is going to make it where we almost just have to go through and jam him in. Now, our next running back will be Antonio Gibson at 13. Very similar here. Antonio Gibson, someone I liked coming into the season when you were getting this running back at the beginning of the second round based on the idea that he had that league-breaking upside if he was able to take that role away from J.D. McKissic in the receiving game. Well, he was never able to take that role away from him. I mean, now it looks like Antonio Gibson is someone that's definitely just a first and second down running back, despite having 70 receiving yards this past week. That was done with a 1 reception and 1 reception only. Now, just like what we're saying with Jonathan Taylor, while I'm getting very worried from a season-long standpoint, at least you have a great matchup going up against the Atlanta Falcons here. So I'm worried about Taylor. I'm worried about Antonio Gibson. I know these rankings probably look aggressive, but it's more so based on the matchup and the talent of the running backs, even those situations that they have and their offenses are horrible. Now, our next tier of running backs is going to be led off with Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 14, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, you could try to convince me that Clyde Edwards-Helaire needs to be in this tier above alongside Antonio Gibson and alongside Jonathan Taylor. And with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, y'all know that our ranking last week, we had him in an aggressive spot where I was telling everybody they had to play Clyde Edwards-Helaire based on the fantastic matchup that they actually had going up against what was a very soft run defense with the Los Angeles Chargers. Well, now going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm a little concerned with this past week that you also get an additional Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumble, where I think he is at this point one fumble away where he's possibly losing this job. I mean, I would imagine that Andy Reid's not going to be putting up with turnover after turnover after turnover. So that always has to be in the back of our minds. And of course, that's not the main piece of analysis here, but you're also looking at the fact that Darrell Williams did see an expanded role this past week. I don't like the matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles as much as what we had against the Los Angeles Chargers, because I actually think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be able to win this game through the air. Clyde Edwards-Helaire hasn't had that massive receiving down role. So yeah, we told you all to buy low on Clyde Edwards-Helaire not that long ago, but I think now he's a sell high after a very strong performance with some negative indicators looking like he may be trending in the wrong direction, even though his value has gotten a massive boom. So this is a very easy spot for us to go out there and just take that profit. Now, our next running back, someone that we don't like, someone I called a sell high player after week 1. I mean, and do you remember how much hate everybody gave for me saying to sell David Montgomery high for reasons X, Y, and Z after week 1 against the Los Angeles Rams? You owe me an apology. But anyway, David Montgomery here going against the Detroit Lions. This is a great matchup. This should be a get-right spot for the Justin Fields-led Chicago Bears. So I think we have to play David Montgomery everywhere we can. We have to have him as a high-end running back too, mainly just driven by the matchup. Also, we know this is a running back that's almost guaranteed to see 20 touches in this game. So we're going to go David Montgomery at running back 15. And our last running back in this tier will be James Robinson at running back 16 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Cannot wait to see Joe Burrow versus Trevor Lawrence. I mean, these are two quarterbacks that I think you're going to be hearing their names a lot over the next decade, obviously. And here with James Robinson, this is just a spot that I think it's a great matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. He's getting all the targets out of his backfield. Now, I will say you have to be slightly concerned that Carlos Hyde's still getting a considerable amount of carries here, but James Robinson at running back 16, I think that's a fair ranking. Now, in our next tier, dropping us down to tier 17, we're going to have Chris Carson going up against the San Francisco 49ers. So Carson can't be in the tier above this. I don't love the matchup against the 49ers, where the 49ers, while yes, they provided, I mean, just a decent amount of points for anybody who started a Green Bay Packer this past week. We know that, I mean, the Green Bay Packers are going to put up points against anybody. Aaron Jones is very different than Chris Carson. With Chris Carson here, still a running back that I don't necessarily view as having that elite league-breaking potential as you would see someone like Aaron Jones. So instead, I think we actually just have Chris Carson at 17. Now, running back 18 with the Los Angeles Chargers matchup, Josh Jacobs is going to be slammed right in here. And with Jacobs, we haven't seen him in 2 weeks now, given a couple nagging injuries that he has. But with the Los Angeles Chargers, let's go back 2 weeks ago where they gave up 220 total yards to both Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. This past week, they gave up 100 rushing yards to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a running back that hadn't hit that mark in literally forever. And now when you're getting Josh Jacobs in what should be a very nice matchup, in that the Los Angeles Chargers, they're just a defense that is allowing the run, and they don't care about just changing that at all when they're winning football games by shutting down the opponent's team just with what they can do through the air. So I think Josh Jacobs could be a spot that, if he is healthy, of course, very similar to Dalvin Cook, we're going to have to monitor all the way to kickoff. He is someone that I want in my starting lineup, even though I know we'll get a million questions about that. Now, our next running back at running back 19, Darrell Henderson, someone else we're having to monitor all the way till kickoff, going up against the Arizona Cardinals, with Henderson here just looking like he's going to be the lead running back in what should be the most exciting offense in football, or at least one of the most exciting offenses in football, with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp. Almost included Robert Woods in that instance, but Robert Woods is like the fourth option on this team at this point. So yeah, Darrell Henderson, just the lead running back in what should be a very high-scoring game. I mean, if we're pulling up right now implied team totals, I would not be surprised if you actually have this game with the highest total between the Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams. Yeah, so pulling this up now, you actually have the Rams as the third team with their implied team total. They are actually 6-point favorites against the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, you have the Bills and the Chiefs a little bit more than that. We'll get to a Bills player in just a little bit. Now, our next running back, Kareem Hunt at running back 20 in the same tier. You're looking at Kareem Hunt going, oh my gosh. I mean, he is taking that Jarvis Landry role. He is going through and he is getting additional usage in the receiving game with no Jarvis Landry here. This should have been the expectation, knowing that Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be playing more so on the outside, where Jarvis Landry was that slot wide receiver. And we know that Kareem Hunt got usage in that area of the field back in 2019 when he came back from his suspension. So then Kareem Hunt is going to see a boosted role and is a must-start running back every single week that you have no Jarvis Landry here. The matchup against Minnesota isn't the best, but I don't necessarily think we have to be too worried about it. Now, our last tier of running back is going to be led off with someone y'all know I did not like coming into drafts. I still am not a massive fan of him, but we have to have him here, Mike Davis. Now, with Mike Davis going up against the Washington football team, this Washington football team isn't nearly as scary as what it once was. I thought this was going to be a defense we had to be worried about, but I mean, for whatever reason, they just haven't been. Not necessarily a massive fan of Mike Davis for obvious reasons. You know what? Now that I'm saying this out loud, we're not putting Mike Davis here. Thomas, drop Mike Davis down to the very end of these rankings. Mike Davis is going to be our 24th running back. I know the usage is there, but the talent isn't. At the same time, Cordell Patterson getting all the targets out of the backfield. I almost felt like I was obligated to put Mike Davis here just because of the guaranteed role, but we can't. I mean, this is a running back that we hated coming into the season. Why the hell would I have him ranked here? Now, instead, at running back 21, we'll have Najee Harris going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Another running back I did not like coming into the year. Now, with Tampa, a very difficult matchup that he will have. I'll say he'll also have that expanded role with no James White in New England for this week. So I'd imagine that Najee Harris is a very polarizing player, especially in DFS this week, knowing that you should see an expanded role, but the matchup against Tampa Bay is something we need to be avoiding everywhere we can. I mean, y'all know we said to be looking to avoid Sony Michel this past week. Sony Michel actually did better than I was expecting, just considering the fact that the Rams got to such a large lead. They did run the ball at the end, but this Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense is fantastic. Now, our next running back will be Chase Edmonds with the Los Angeles Rams matchup. And with Chase Edmonds here, you should expect him to play in a very high-scoring game. And with Edmonds, this is a running back that is getting almost all the utilization in the receiving game for his offense. Now, yes, you have James Conner coming away with the rushing touchdowns this past week, but we always knew that Chase Edmonds wasn't going to have that goal line role. I mean, even if he did, Kyler Murray was there to vulture the rushing touchdowns regardless. You're more excited about the Chase Edmonds receiving usage in what should be a shootout. And now our last running back before Mike Davis, we're putting him above Mike Davis, Miles Sanders. Oh my gosh. The problem is with Miles Sanders, it's hard to look at this past week where you had 49 dropbacks for Jalen Hurts and you only had 3 rushing attempts with the combined Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell pairing. But it was obviously due to the fact that you just had such a large lead established by the Dallas Cowboys over the Philadelphia Eagles that the Eagles had to throw the ball consistently. Well, now they're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Going up against the Chiefs, you would naturally assume that the spread on this game is monstrous. I mean, let me pull this up. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 10-point spread. It's a 7-point spread. I am very surprised by that. So, yeah, I mean, maybe this game's a little more just competitive than I initially thought. That's going to be something we have to talk about on our sports betting channel. And, yeah, lastly, we'll have Mike Davis. We've already talked about him. And then one last honorable mention will be Zach Moss. And here with Zach Moss, this is a running back that we're looking at saying, I mean, he is playing in what should be one of the highest scoring offenses in the week. He's the lead running back. Yes, Josh Allen's going to vulture touchdowns at the goal line. Yes, Devin Singletary is going to have a role. But I think Zach Moss, you could easily make an argument for him to slide in as a top 24 running back, looking at the matchup, looking at the offense that he's playing in. So definitely just want to be considering his name here. I think he'll actually make our must-start running back list if you are getting a little desperate with injuries. Now, thank you for coming out, watching this video. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I really hope that you got something from it, and I really hope that you have a great day.